Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon with Marion Bergen. I'm just going to allow a short length of time for everyone to join us, and I'm absolutely delighted. We have huge numbers this afternoon, so Marion's expertise is definitely sought after. She's going to bring you through coaching for effective Instagram, and into the conversation she's going to put up some questions to you verbally, and then if you could put them in the answers in the chat or the Q&A, that'd be great. And as usual, we'll have an opportunity at the end to talk and tease out topics. So Hannah Farrell is with me this afternoon to help if we have internet issues, and I hope my colleague Brian McGee will be joining at some stage also. So with that, we're all going to disappear and leave Marion to take it away. Thank you very much, Marion. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and lovely to have you all here to have your digital company on this wet and muggy afternoon in Dublin, from wherever in the country you're based. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming here today, and also to thank the gorgeous humans at the Design and Crafts Council for inviting me to pitch. I returned from a 15-year career in London last year, and I went to Showcase Ireland, and I was so inspired by all of the amazing makers that I saw. For me, it's looking at Irish craft and design, you know, I'm coming to it with fresh eyes because I've been away for such a very long time, and it's just really energizing to see so much creative talent coming out of this country. And you know, I'm really passionate about working with it and supporting makers in whatever way I can. So it's an absolute privilege to be invited here today to share some of my expertise with you. You know, as I've said, there's a huge opportunity for Irish companies international, and now more than ever, as we all know, in light of recent circumstances, is a brilliant time to start working on building your business digitally. So I work broadly as a digital creative director in lots of different fields, depending on what day it is. But really my expertise lies in finding innovative and exciting ways to communicate your brand story on digital platforms. So when I work with my clients, my aim is to create a digital manifestation of physical products. Obviously, the last few weeks, we've seen a seismic shift to doing everything online. That's, you know, even if we haven't been digitally focused, it's really made a lot of us get our digital act in gear. And now more than ever, I think as businesses, we should be looking to future-proof our business because we don't know what's ahead of us, and really bolstering our digital presence. So just as a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about today, really your takeaways from today, like the social media and digital, it's such a huge space, and there's, you know, there's so much that I could talk about, but I would like you guys to be taking away 5 really solid tips that will just give you some nice things to focus on in terms of building your digital presence and sort of knowing how to get started on Instagram. These tips will help you grow your numbers and your followers, and it will increase brand awareness, which ultimately will grow your sales, which is what we're all after. So, starting with a lovely video of what we as makers do best. This is our comfort zone. This is a lot of our comfort zone, and I think this is why a lot of makers and crafts people don't come naturally to digital, because we're not naturally coming at it from a tech angle. That's not the way makers' minds works. We want to be in the process. We want to be making stuff. We want to be bringing joy into people's lives by sharing what we've made. That's what drives us to set up creative businesses. Now, a lot of clients that I work with really struggle with Instagram because we're happiest in the studio and we want it all under our control. But like ultimately, if you want to have a successful business as a maker, you have to embrace digital, and you know, it's your opportunity to spread your message and to spread the beauty of what you're doing and that craft to a much wider audience, and obviously keep you in business and sustain you doing what you like. Yeah, people are, so some people love social, but that's not everybody. And there's something that I regularly encounter with creators is just a bit of a resistance to sort of self-promotion and social media in general, because, you know, it's that kind of modesty of, I don't know if it's an Irish thing as well, but just, you know, we're not like necessarily like other countries where we're like always talking about ourselves and sort of pushing ourselves out there. There's that modesty. And, you know, this is something that I've struggled with when I was running my fashion business, which I will talk about in a moment, and just something that I sort of had to overcome and realize that if I wanted to successfully scale my business, it was really important to embrace that. Yeah, a lot of makers just want to sweep social media under the rug and hope it goes away, but it's not going away anywhere. And once you sort of build the confidence there, and once you work with some of the tips that I'm sharing today and start figuring it out and just putting a little bit more attention into it, it's actually something that you can grow to love, because it's a direct opportunity for you to communicate with your consumers on a day-to-day business. And that feeling of community, it feels really nice for you as a maker and a creator, and it feels really nice for your consumers as well. So yeah, so in terms of what fulfills me, it's working with my clients to nurture them, whether it's on creative or social media or whatever area they need help to grow and expand. And like, I just get a real thrill out of sharing the things that I've learned and seeing brands blossom, which is, yeah, just really lovely. That's me there with my COVID-19 tan. So a little bit about me and sort of why I am here offering you expertise today. So I ran a fashion label. I started and scaled my own fashion label in London, to exporting to over 50 countries internationally, you know, stocked in Selfridges, Hong Kong's Lane Crawford, Topshop, Aesop's, all the usual ones. But I very early on identified the power of social media to reach new territories overnight. So I would literally look at Taiwan and think, I want to export to Taiwan. And I would find out who the social media influencers were in Taiwan, and I would partner with them and I would send them product. We posted very, very regularly, like we actively grew our Instagram very quickly. So during the course of a 2-year period, I grew the Instagram to 35,000 Instagram followers and 25,000 Facebook followers. Now this was all organic. So it was using content, constantly churning out new content, being really vocal, being a bit fun, like speaking in my tone of voice, so that people really connected with not only what we were making, but with the message, and, you know, the values were aligned with our consumers. And it just spread like wildfire, really, because once it clicks and once you figure out how to make social media and Instagram in particular work for you, it can start to grow like that, you know, and you start turning followers into friends, and then friends become advocates, and that's really how that wildfire grows. In terms of my personal background, I was educated in history of art and Italian at Trinity College, and then I moved over into buying and design, initially for our very own Dunay's boutique, before moving to House of Fraser, where I was a jewellery buyer, and then I headed up a design team, a jewellery design team. I personally have experience, apart from social media, like manufacturing in China, Turkey, London, and lots of experience in export as well. So like, I come at social media very much from a maker background, which probably isn't the traditional way that route to social media, but there's just stuff that I figured out sort of along the way through trial and error. So work smarter, not harder is my motto at this point. I didn't always make the right choices in the early stages of my business, and I probably overcommitted on hours. And you know, there was obviously, when you're doing fashion weeks and stuff, like, it is crazy hours, but I probably pushed myself and sort of didn't necessarily have the structures and the strategies in place that would actually facilitate making my working, and as a result, my personal life easier. So the skills that I have now are skills that I've really honed after years of trial and error. You know, working as a creative director as well with remote teams, looking at processes, workflows, all of those things, like the sort of nuts and bolts that you need to like connect all together to make a business run smoothly. Yeah, with in the same way that you have your crafts now, I guess, like, digital has become my craft. And, you know, I've learned how to meet clients, to assess their needs and sort of just see how I can help them. Because that's what actually, that's what I'm driven by, is, you know, doing exciting work with cool brands and helping their lives be easier and helping them reach more consumers. I am a bit of a tech nerd at this point, and I love productivity flows and little hacks, and you know, I'm all about the apps and joining everything up and automating things where possible. But ultimately, it's just honing processes so that you can spend more time doing what you love and being with your consumers, and less time doing all of the stuff that you probably don't naturally want to do that much, which is like a lot of the digital stuff. But yeah, if you come at it from the right approach, it can actually be really fun and really rewarding. So here's a standard scroll on my Instagram account of my business. And with your social media content, what your number one aim is to stop the scroll. So your consumer is scrolling. And if your content is good enough, so your imagery and your copy is good enough, your consumer will click on your image. And even if they're not following you already, they will click. And then the click will bring them through to the post. And then if they like the post, they will have a look at the page. And then if they like the page, they will start following you. So you have these billions of users on Instagram. And if you get it right, you can have a piece of that pie. But your content and your messaging, you know, when you hear people saying content is king, it has to be really good, because you're trying to get somebody, out of all of the information that they're provided with, to come over onto your page, to click, to like, and possibly even to write a comment. You know, and that, for somebody, it sounds very simple, but for somebody who's just on the endless scroll, that's a huge amount of effort. But for the same token, you know, if you put the effort in on your side, then the person, you're more likely to get that engagement. A quote here by the king of branding himself, Simon Sinek. There are two ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate it, or you can inspire it. Now, this is an excerpt, this is a quote taken from his book, Start With Why. I hope that's the right title, but it's something like that. And he's talking about marketing. He's talking about attracting customers. And just in terms of what that means, so from a marketing perspective, just to give you an example, a manipulation technique from a marketing perspective would be, company, should I say, that uses a manipulation technique would be Ryanair. So Nothing wrong with Ryanair. They got us all flying. You know, we're probably doing a lot of our visits to our export clients on Ryanair flights. They really revolutionized the airline industry. However, in terms of their marketing, they use a tactic of scarcity. So, you know, they'll drop a price, they'll slash all the prices on a Friday evening, and the offer will end at midnight on a Sunday. So that's classic manipulation marketing techniques, because they're using a price drop to manipulate you into buying. And then you feel that because, as a consumer, you feel that because unless you buy by Sunday, you're not going to be available at that price again. And the flights are all going to sell out. So it's that whole scarcity. Ryanair are not providing you with a beautiful video about Warsaw or a lovely video about the south of Spain to inspire you to buy those flights. They're simply using manipulation techniques. When we talk about inspiring our consumers, that's what you guys are going to be homing in on, because you have inspirational businesses. You have a value in your businesses. Your businesses are created by a person, made by hand, you know, and that's a very sort of tactile kind of brand. So what you're aiming to do is to catch their attention and ignite a spark in their imagination. So just ignite that little spark and create a connection that goes beyond a price reduction. Because at the end of the day, if you can inspire them with really great content, then price isn't as much of an issue. You know, you're not going to have to be discounting, because they're going to connect with your brand, and then it's going to inspire them to purchase. So, this is an example. So this is a little brand that I threw together yesterday evening. It's not an actual physical brand, but this is an example of a poor Instagram post. And there's various different factors that make it a poor Instagram post. So I'd like to throw this one out to you and to ask you to drop into the chat why you think this is a poor Instagram post.
Okay, I'm getting a number of them back, Marion.
Excellent.
Quite a lot of them. So hold on. It's too cluttered. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Poor image and manipulation. It's not very exciting. Not a great photo. Poor
Agreed.
imagery. Bad copy. Website not visible. Too busy. Well done, guys. Logo and words cut off. Muddled photo. Price drop off. No personal touch. No story about the maker or product. Impersonal. No information about where or who is creating the ceramics. Okay. No lead website. Text at top left and fairish photo. The picture is blurred. The website is cut off. There isn't any product info. Random photo, no close-up. Website, no website. Image is truncated. Too many objects. Image is okay, unattractive, too busy, no tags. Written piece isn't clear. I immediately noticed the bad type, but that is just me. Muddled text, bad grammar, no call to attention. I think that's a fairly good sample of what they've noted. So everyone's with us. Thanks.
Well, I mean, what an astounding, like, I'm wondering why you need to be here today. You guys have got this licked, you know exactly what you're doing. So yeah, all really valid points. There's website is cut off at the top. There's graphics on the image. The image is poorly lit. It's like a yellow tone. You can tell it's just been shot on a shelf in fluorescent lighting. The copy is uninspiring. It's driven by a discount. It's not telling a story. So yeah, all the things that you guys have touched on, absolutely, that is all very valid. And now, this is an example of a good Instagram post, and I'd like to know why it's a good Instagram post.
Okay, well, I start you. I've got one instant story.
Excellent.
Instant story, there's a story, there's a simple collection of objects. It focuses on handmade. There's good lighting. It is clear, but light not great. Looks like it could be in your own home. Clarity of object, mood and atmosphere, great story. It's dynamic. Everything's more balanced and visible. Good copy. Straightforward photo. It's tactile. Any image tags? Question mark.
Yes, image tags are possible, and that's a very valid point. I haven't put one on this, so
okay. Logo and wording is good.
For anybody who doesn't know, there is a facility where you can tag an image to link to a URL to sell that image on Instagram.
Okay, Marion, do you want to repeat that again? Because I may have cut across you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. There is a functionality with your Instagram where you can tag an image to link it to sell the product. So you can actually tag it with the price so your consumers can directly engage and purchase from your Instagram post.
Okay. Stage in the process. Good anecdote and narrative. It puts us straight into the creative mind of a potter. The imperfection is very disarming and draws one in. That's lovely. Any link in bio emphasizes each handmade piece is unique. Okay, is that enough to keep us going for a while?
I think that was a really good point as well, of being, you can put a link in bio, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend on every single post. I think variety is key with your Instagram. And so the reason why this one, for example, is a good post, like obviously there will be posts that you'll have which will be more direct to sales, but what I work with is social media branding. So social media branding and social media strategy. And if you're building a brand, you're telling a story. And when you're telling the story, so I think you had a couple of people commented on the narrative. What is the narrative of the story? And so you want to feel like you're sharing your story with consumers without pushing them to purchase all of the time, because if you push too much and you don't inspire enough, then it starts feeling a little bit too salesy, and it's a very fine balance. But for example, like, because you're makers, something like this is like, you're not asking them to do anything necessarily in this post, you're just giving them something, and you're letting them know that, like, you're sharing your process, which means that you're invested in them as a consumer, which means that, that it's a shared story. Showing, it's very important as well as makers to show what differentiates your product from mass production. So focusing on things like little handmade flaws, or, the signs of the maker, like, these are all things that the market loves. And yeah, you guys touched as well on the photography. Like, these pots are unglazed, but they're nicely arranged. The lighting is, for a brand called Turned Earth, like, the lighting, it looks quite earthen. And so it all sort of goes together to get the effect that you want. But yeah, some really great answers there. So I don't know how many of you here tuned into Bob Gray of Red and Gray's webinar, which I just thought was really, really strong. And I've lifted sort of what I'm delivering to you today is really a follow on from what Bob was discussing. So you've designed this beautiful brand. You've figured out the essence of your brand. You've figured out the how, the why, the what. And then you have to communicate that brand, and you have to expand that brand out beyond an identity into whether it's an exhibition stand or your packaging or your social media. And a brand is very much about how you make your customers feel. And solid brands are built by taking a consistent approach across every single interaction they have with your brand. So you need to be thinking about how you're articulating your brand across other platforms. And it's about finding the right methods to engage with your consumers on different platforms. Now, some of the clients that I work with will ask, you know, what's the ROI on social, on Instagram? And it's not something that's, social media isn't necessarily something that's immediately quantifiable in terms of ROI, because it is a longer term brand building exercise. So by even having a presence on social media, that's really adding clout to your brand. But it's just making sure that you have that consistent message between your website and between your social media. Primarily, your Instagram is there to boost your brand awareness. But by leveraging the power of this platform, it allows you to reach new consumers who are actively searching for products. So, just a few little facts here. Brand engagement on Instagram is 10 times higher than Facebook, 54 times higher than Pinterest, and 84 times higher than Twitter. So if you're confused as a maker, as a seller, about which platform you need to be engaging on, I think you only need to look at these numbers to figure out which one to focus your attention on. In terms of like your website, a consumer will not, well, it's unlikely unless they're a super fan, but will not visit your website every single day. A consumer may see your social media post every single day. So in terms of your social media feed, anybody who's using Instagram, they're pretty much on Instagram at least once a day, usually several times a day. And your Instagram, building your Instagram business is, building your Instagram messaging is a really great opportunity to touch base with that consumer every single day. And it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to sell them something every day, but it means that you're just sort of in constant communication, so that when they do come to purchase that scarf or that chair, or, you know, you're already at the forefront of their mind. So simply by being on Instagram, simply by having a presence on Instagram, brands can actually make a positive impression on their potential shoppers. So many people now will look to Instagram as a validation of a brand. So they will look at the website, or they'll buy a product and then they'll check out the Instagram and see what the brand is saying and see what the story is saying, because we're interested. And if we find a product that we love, or we encounter something that we love, we want to understand what else, what's the rest of the story that's going on around that. People invest in brands that they love and that sort of align with their own values. At the moment, we have so much choice. We have more choice than we've ever had. And that can be really, really overwhelming. So this is where your opportunity is to connect with the consumer on a personal level, so that your brand is at the forefront of their minds. People come to Instagram. So if you think of a user that's coming to Instagram versus Facebook, people go onto their Facebook to connect with friends, to share articles, to talk about politics and all of these various things. People come to Instagram specifically to look at pictures. That is what the platform was designed for. And they also come to Instagram to discover brands. So 70% of users come to Instagram, users who come to Instagram shop with brands. So if you think about how powerful that is, they are already in the headspace of finding a brand and making a purchase when your image can potentially pop up on their feed. The amazing thing about Instagram as well is that you can get organic traction. So if you play your cards right and you deliver it in the right way, you don't even necessarily need to invest in advertising just yet. And Instagram is really the main platform where, like a Facebook feed now, for most brands, I mean, I know there are a couple of exceptions, but for most brands, you know, Facebook is in the business of getting a brand to pay for advertising to show up on somebody's feed. That's not 100% the case yet with Instagram. So now more than ever is the right time to bolt down your strategy and figure out what it is that's going to make people follow your profile and click through to your website. The other brilliant thing about Instagram is that this is your opportunity to rub shoulders with the big guys. So there's no way on earth that you would have an opportunity to open a store alongside a high street retailer. However, on Instagram, you're all in the exact same space. So you can, if you play your cards right and you get found by your followers, you have potential to take that sale from that big retailer. You can compete with them. You can sit at the table with them. And now is a brilliant time as well, because people are actively looking to support smaller businesses, especially in light of recent times. People want to work with brands that sort of bolster their own brand and help them, and do that by sort of helping them find brands that other people don't necessarily know about. You know, there's like social kudos in terms of discovering things that are beautiful that other people don't know about. So it all starts with strategy for me. Being strategic. So strategy is really setting time aside to bolt down what your goals are and plan your social media efforts accordingly. Because otherwise and I've seen it in so many companies, but it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's, oh, we have to jump on that hashtag today, or, you know, and that will obviously happen a little bit as well. But if you plan well enough in advance, your social media will essentially run itself, because you know how many pictures you need, you have the copy planned in advance, then it's done, and you can hand it over to an intern or to a junior, or, you know, just even put aside a day for yourself, a week, where you're going to focus on it. So the things that I would generally cover in strategy are identifying who your consumer is. So really honing in on that, looking at your tone of voice, any of your creatives. So whether you're working with graphics or what kind of photos you post, scheduling and frequency of posts. So looking at your schedule and what's right for you and your business. So is that a post every single day? Is it a post every 2 days? Is it one post a week? Like, what's going to work well for you? Looking at hashtags. So I'll touch on this shortly, but like finding the hashtags that are relevant for your brand and for your business to allow you to get discovered by people, by the greater world of Instagram. And also looking at influencers and communities. So who are the people that are going to champion your brand, and who are the people that are going to spread that message, and how are you going to approach them? How are you going to engage them, and how do you plan to work with them? I find that a lot of companies, a lot of companies hand over the social media to the junior or to the intern because they're young and they get social, and we all know about millennials and social. And, you know, this is a great idea. However, handing over without a solid strategy for them to follow is where you encounter trouble. Because if they're just left to their own devices, then you're allowing them to imprint their creative onto your brand. And it's really important that you don't let that happen, because you've gone to all of the effort of creating this product, building this brand, and then your day-to-day engagement with your consumer, which is your Instagram, is being handed to somebody who's kind of just making it up as they go along with graphics, or, you know, doesn't have very clear outlines within which to work. That's when a digital brand starts to fall apart. So it's really, really, yeah, I just can't stress enough how important it is to have these things bolted down, so that you get a peace of mind and that you know that your brand is being articulated in the right way on your Instagram feed. So onto the takeaways. One, creative direction, synergy across all platforms. So like I said, I am a real stickler for this. I move through the world in colors and images, which is how many of your consumers will engage with your brand. At a glance here, I've just dropped in the Instagram feed for The Nice Things, which is my agency under which I operate. But you can see at a glance that, you know, I've got a very clear direction on colors and mood that all make sense together. I work with sharing other people's content, and it's kind of like, this is my inspiration space. This is my mood board, as it were. So with the creative direction, it means taking your brand identity and ensuring that you have the same colors, the same fonts, and any graphics or any overlays on videos also tie in with your brand identity, your toolkit. So what you really want is that when somebody looks at your Instagram feed, they immediately sort of recognize that it's your brand, because it's a reflection of what your physical brand is. And that's when you build a really strong brand equity. When you know you're absolutely killing it as a brand when somebody just recognizes your posts or your imagery or your tone of voice without you even having to tell them. So it's this consistency as well that actually builds up trust with the consumer. And if you keep that solid and you keep that consistent, you know, you're not moving away from your brand too much, and the consumer is getting a consistent message from sort of a very sort of a singular voice across all platforms, then it's something that they begin to trust, you know. And that's a big hurdle for a lot of people, is jumping that trust barrier when it comes to digital, because it's not like you're standing in front of your consumer and you're having a conversation with them. It's very, very different. So your brand really is the personality of your business. So this is an example of a brand that I work with quite a lot, and that brand is Dublin Herbalists. It's a Dublin skincare brand, and this just goes to show you sort of like how that creative direction can be applied to their imagery. So the whole brand experience is about Claire, the owner, who was, you know, started as a naturopath and then started making her skincare at the kitchen table. So it's very much a homespun business. And what we wanted to achieve was to communicate that softness, that connection to nature, and that idea of a kitchen table. So, you know, we use like the very sort of natural pottery and the soft colors. So that just sort of shows you what would go into making a really nice content image that engages your consumer and that stops the scroll. Copy. Be creative and develop a unique voice. So you've got your gorgeous image and they've stopped, and now they're going to read the copy. And what you want to do is make your customers feel something. So like the example I showed you in the good Instagram post, it's a story. It's more than just a sales pitch. It's clearly written by somebody who is passionate about their brand and the story of their business. So it's really important to understand how to make your customers feel something. You need to understand what their values are, what they champion. So for example, with Dublin Herbalists, the kind of people that shop with them value a natural way of living. They value a connection with the earth. They value flowers. It's that country lifestyle. And once you have those values, that's what goes into building your Instagram creative and your creative in general that will get them to engage. After visuals, caption and related copy is the second most important thing. It's important to establish what your brand voice is. So as an example, there's so many different voices in terms of, and there's so many different personalities. What is the personality of your brand and how does it communicate? So is it cheeky? Is it serene? Is it very feminine? Is it very Irish? You know, what way are you going to speak to your consumers? So a voice and a tone guide would include phrases like, you know, company catchphrases, personality traits, all of those kind of things. Even like, it sometimes helps if you think of your consumer as a person and what their personality is and how they want to be spoken to. It's also as well, when it comes to bolting this down, as I touched on with working with interns or juniors, there you may have, you know, a high turnover of interns. So you may have a new intern every 3 months and they all have different personalities and different voices. So getting the tone of voice bolted down means that no matter what, no matter who's managing, you're still having that consistency that is key to building your brand through social media. Community, and this is what social media is all about. It's about turning the followers into friends and turning those friends into advocates. So you've got your copy sorted, you've got your creative absolutely bolted down, and then you've got your comments and your engagements. Now, your consumers can tell if you really care about them by how you treat them on social media. A real bugbear of mine is where I see beautiful brands and comments. Consumers are taking the effort to put a comment on your social media and comments aren't being liked and aren't being responded to. This is your opportunity to have a chat with your customer. So you can chat with them in lots of different ways. You can ask questions. You can, you know, I had one brand that I worked with recently and they were getting negative comments, and we managed those negative comments. Like, we turned the negative comments into positive experiences because we asked, well, why do you think that? Or what is your viewpoint? Or how would you like to change things? And suddenly you've got somebody who's made a negative comment on a page that's suddenly realizing that you're invested in them and their opinions. And people want to can make their purchases with brands who are invested in them and who take on board what they're saying, you know, that they're not just a number as a consumer, that they actually have a valid point of view and something that can help and grow a business. Yeah, like, I like to think of it as, you know, we've all gone into the coffee shop where there's a moody assistant who, or a moody barista who doesn't engage with you and doesn't really say very much, and your experience is a bit like, And then there's the coffee shop where you go in and they say, how's your day going? You know, awful weather or whatever it is, and just take the effort to just have a little chat, you know. And they're the shops that you're going to go back to because you feel like you've had a personal experience and it makes you feel like you matter. It makes you feel like you're not invisible. And that's particularly important in digital because we don't have the visibility, the face-to-face visibility. So your social media is your little white Americano chat with your consumers. Also falling under the umbrella of community is influencers, the controversial term. And a lot of brands wonder, you know, is it worthwhile working with influencers? How does it work? What I would say is really it's a case-by-case basis. Influencers worked exceptionally well for my brand. I was very strategic in terms of territories that I wanted to export to. I did the research. I found out about the influencers. I never paid for influencers to feature my product. But what I would recommend is if you want to work with influencers, have a think about where your social media stands in terms of the influencer's brand. So say, for example, an influencer has 70,000 followers. It's unlikely that if you have 1,500 followers that they're going to engage with your brand unless your brand proposition is really, really, really strong. So what I would say though is for any kind of Instagram strategy, potentially identify a group of 10 influencers that you like. So let's say you have 1,500 followers. Identify 10 influencers that you like and that resonate with what you do, and also where their followers would appreciate your brand. 10 influencers, get a little product offering or a little press release or whatever it is together and target those influencers. So get in touch with the influencers, make a point of contact initially, and then see if they'd like to sample some of your product or they'd like to write about your product. Just open it up really, really casually. And what you can then do is, find the influencers that are going to work with you and champion your brand and really turn them into ambassadors. So you're going on a journey with those influencers as well. So potentially this relationship that you build with them will last beyond a season. And potentially you will send them product every quarter or every 6 months or whatever you can afford, because this needs to go in on under your press and marketing budget. And it can be really, really successful if you consistently work with it and get the right people talking about your brand. It really helps support your sales. Hashtags. This is another client. Picture is a jewelry brand called Inner Island that I work with on creative direction and content. And Gemma is an example of somebody who has her Instagram strategy on point. Her social media strategy is brilliant. Her hashtag strategy is on point. I think a lot of brands get confused with hashtags because hashtags have almost become like an exclamation logo that you see on t-shirts. So like hashtag whatever, or, you know, it's hard to understand how to use them. So with hashtags, an average Instagram post contains 10 hashtags, but you can use up to 30 hashtags at a time. So what that means is if you use a hashtag, for example, handmade scarf, other people on Instagram who are following that hashtag will get posts belonging to that hashtag in their feed, and that is how you can reach new consumers. In terms of choosing your hashtags, so in terms of your hashtag strategy, be really considered in that as well. So, you know, you'll see people posting hashtag love, hashtag summer, hashtag beach, hashtag swimwear, or whatever it is. And those hashtags are so, so broad. So hashtag love has 50 million or thereabouts people posts underneath that hashtag. What you're aiming to do is hone it down. So to really, really focus in your hashtag strategy. So say, for example, in the maker area, hashtag scarf has over 10 million posts. However, hashtag handmade scarf has 54,000. So that's a really, really sizable difference. And what you want to be doing is finding hashtags that are under 100,000, that are much lower because they're more specific to your product. So really figure out the specifics of your product and then start playing around and discovering new ways to work with hashtags. And it's not always necessarily about your product per se. So it's not always necessarily hashtag cheese or whatever it is. It can actually be down to a lifestyle as well. So there are hashtags on Instagram such as hashtag curated life, hashtag simple living, hashtag the simple everyday, that are more tuned into lifestyle. But these are ones that people who follow a certain lifestyle can use to discover your brand as well. Stories. So what we have here is an example of a story that I posted on my personal Instagram, which is my creative director Instagram, not the nice things. This is a summary of the week of the 24th of May. And this is just me sharing my thoughts as a creative person. So it's not necessarily selling product, but it's working with my messaging and it's working with my personal brand. And the reason why I wanted to show you this is I recently had an amazing discovery, because the joy of me not being the brand, so me being a person on social media, is that I get to guinea pig myself in terms of seeing what works and what doesn't. And my clients have been asking me how to really crack Instagram stories. So I did a little experiment, and I had been posting stories, so like one or two things every day, and then a coffee, and then this and that. And it was kind of like scattered all the way through the week. And then I wondered what would happen if I consolidated all of those little scattered things, an update of my week, into one story a week. And the results were amazing. So my engagement on my stories doubled straight away. So I had been, during a weekday, I'd get maybe 150 views, or, 150 to 200 views. And by consolidating my stories into telling one story per week on a Sunday, I was getting 400 views, which is a really sizable difference. And I think the reason behind that is because, we're all out doing stuff and we're all busy during the week and people only have so much focus. However, if you're consolidating your story into one story a week, A, it's focusing your efforts, and B, you're telling a full story. So you're not drip feeding people one piece of information here, one piece of information there. You're actually telling a story of what happened in that week in your business. Now, with stories, you can be a bit more playful as well. So if you're being really pristine on your creative direction, in terms of what you post on your feed, you don't have to be quite as pristine with your stories. So your stories disappear after 24 hours. So this is a brilliant place to show the behind the scenes of your business, or share your little thoughts, or any other interesting stuff that makes up the world of you and your business. It doesn't necessarily need to be as product focused. However, I would say it's really nice to make your stories talk to your feed. So on a Sunday when I post my story, I'll also post something on my feed, and I'll ask one of my posts in my story will tell people that there's a new post on my feed. So you want to make these sort of cross-pollinate each other in terms of what they're saying. Also, once you're over a certain amount of followers, I think it's 10,000, you can actually get them to swipe up to click through to make a purchase. You can tell news about new products. You can tell the story of a product. You can, this is where you can just use your imagination and create something fun that people really want to engage with. And the other thing is using hashtags in stories. So you can use the same amount of hashtags in your stories. Now, admittedly, it's not the etiquette to have a story filled with lots of hashtags, but what you can do is you can write your post and you can write your hashtags, and you can just slide your hashtags off screen so they're not even seen. Or another thing you can do is minimize your hashtags, so that you're not disturbing the beautiful aesthetic that you've created. So as we come to the end, just to recap on the top takeaways for Instagram success. 1 is your creative direction. 2 is your copy, so really hone that voice. 3 is your community. Get engaged with your followers, make friends with them, make it fun, make it an enjoyable experience for yourself and for them. 4 is your hashtags. Have a think about your hashtag strategy. Look at similar brands, see what hashtags they're using, and use your hashtag to engage as well. So just, you can post on other people that are posting under that hashtag. And 5 is your stories. This is a really great opportunity to up your game. And Instagram likes you to be on stories. So it likes you to be posting your video on stories as well as in your feed. And all of that goes into making you visible by the dreaded algorithm that, stresses us all out. But once you have all of these things in check, then everything else sort of will start to flow. And, as really, it's just about having confidence. And sometimes you know, it's not feeling like, you're not feeling like that as a business, because there are peaks and troughs in every business. But this is a way for you just to keep pushing out and, you know, to have your voice and your wonderful ideas that have come from your amazing creative mind heard. So, like I said, I just got one more slide. Like I said, that's just touching on some of sort of the key points and the key guidances that I offer my clients. If you have any more questions or anything at all, these are my contact details. And yeah, we have some questions, I believe.
Yeah, we do indeed. First of all, Marion, I'm sorry that I cut across you a little bit. I'm very keen to get people's questions in. I'd like to thank you enormously on part of all our clients and the Design Cast Council. It was just wonderful, really, really good, and demystifying. Now there are a few questions that people have, and I'm just going to reiterate that we're moving to a new format with the webinars, and I think this is a wonderful example of the more interactive. We're going to be moving to clinics, and I'll have a whole raft of information up on our website by tomorrow lunchtime, everyone. So we're moving to this more interactive clinic style. So I think it worked today. So we'll see how it goes. So if I miss one, Marion, please excuse me, and maybe you'd help me along as well. Right, we have one here about are there good examples of brands who use Instagram well?
Well, yes. One of them is an Irish brand who I actually mentioned in who I work with and who I mentioned in the presentation, it's a jewelry brand called Inner Island. And she's made Instagram work exceptionally well for her. Like, she's really honed her voice. She's honed the brand. She's honed the strategy. She's honed the content. Everything that I touched on in terms of the hashtag strategy, she's absolutely nailing it. Another brand that I've worked with is a British brand called LV, and they have over 100,000 followers at this point, but they really they're really built on creating the community. So it's slightly different. It's not as sort of aesthetically beautiful as Gemma's, and it's in a slightly different field, but they use a lot of user-generated content. They engage a lot of influencers. There's a lot of reposting. There's a lot of sort of direct honesty because it's in the femme space. I'm trying to think of other ones off the top of my head. They're probably the main ones that are just coming to mind right now.
Okay, the person that you cited in your presentation, someone would like a repeat of the name of the person who used hashtags well?
Gosh, I think I mentioned a few different people.
Yeah, you did. We'll be sending on the presentation anyway.
Yes.
So hopefully people will be able to cross-refer on that one. And there's a person here would like to go over the practical side of putting up a post, what to put it in, and tagging. I think there's a session in itself on this, but you know, maybe we'll talk about that later. But if you could answer this question for the present, and we may afterwards run a practical session. Yeah.
Sure. So what do they mean by putting up a post? So like the actual, how do you use Instagram as a platform? That's something that's just very difficult for me to talk through without any kind of screen share, or because it's so specific to the app that, you know, for me to show you how to do that, I would, like I've done the little videos on here, I would need to do a video and sort of talk you through and maybe have some screen grabs that would walk you through the steps.
And that's why I might have you back to do this.
Sure. Like it's very, very easily done, you know, and I recently trained my 70-year-old mother to do it out of Instagram, out of social isolation. She's practically an influencer now. So it's just, once you know the steps, that's what's good.
Someone would like the technical definition of an influencer, whilst we've got influencers on the table.
Oh, interesting one. Well, I don't know if it's probably in the Oxford English Dictionary at this stage, but an influencer, it's just somebody really who has clout in their social media circle. So, you know, the main influencer out there, like Mr. Influencer himself, would be someone like James Allen Kavanagh. So this is somebody who has a large following, and brands engage with influencers because if an influencer talks about something, then he or she is talking about it, and their followers will naturally be interested in it. And if they're talking about it, then their followers are more likely to purchase from it because somebody that they admire and look up to or is a role model for them is endorsing a product. So it's kind of like working with influencers. It's similar to, you know, traditional journalism, where if you buy a magazine every week and you follow a certain journalist and they recommend certain products, after a while of following that journalist, you start to trust them because the products they're writing about are products, and you know, it's down to the share value system, but like the products they're writing about are products that you are naturally interested in. So if they recommend a new product, then you're more likely to buy that product. And you know, when I say influencers, the influencers are categorized in different scales. So there's like micro influencers, who are people that have less than 5,000 followers. And then there's, you know, the macro influencers who are like over 100,000. And they're generally the ones that you have to pay quite a lot of money to have them post, unless there's something, you know, it's not unheard of that they just really love your brand and they want to support it as well. So yeah, so it's people of influence, and generally sort of really, you know, there's lots of people of influence in lots of different fields, but it's generally related to the branded space.
Okay, someone's saying here that's a great session, which it is, super session. I've learned a lot. Which app would Marion recommend to assist in scheduling the posts?
I really like Latergram. Yeah, Latergram is fab. And you can also, with Latergram, you can also tag products. So you can click to a URL to, like, you can tag the products, you can put in the price, everything. Yeah, if you make that work for you, it's really, really strong.
Okay, Marion, what are your thoughts on Instagram being so suitable for an older demographic? Oh, right, an older demographic is your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s.
I don't consider them older demographic.
Well, I'm not going to pass judgment on them. I find that a bit depressing myself. Have you a comment?
It depends on the product, really, to be honest with you. Like I said, my mum's 71. Like, she'd murder me if I told anyone. But anyway, I'm telling all of you, keep it a secret. My mother's 71 and she's on Instagram. And like, she's on Instagram more than I am at this point. And I think, like, generally speaking, there are social media platforms that are particular to certain generations. So the majority of Instagram users are under 35. However, like, I've recently worked with a brand that's targeting specifically women in their 40s and 50s. And, you know, we've delved into Instagram and been successful in doing that. It's about knowing where your customers hang out, you know, and I haven't really touched on Facebook today, but Facebook, you can create groups on Facebook. So it might even be that, like, you're not going to necessarily use your Facebook page. You might want to relate more closely to your consumers in groups. But I think, yeah, all ages, like the early adapters are the younger ones. So they're the ones that will be on there and sort of drive it. And then as the early adapters get on it, that's when the next generations start engaging with it as well. But it really comes down to your product as well, and seeing what other brands, like, it doesn't hurt to shop around and see what other brands are doing, like do a SWOT analysis with other brands in a similar space and see what platforms are working for them, because it's really about finding out, like, successful social media is about finding out where your consumers naturally hang out and how you're most likely to sort of get under their noses.
Okay, are you losing out if you don't post stories at all?
I would say yes. So it comes back to the algorithm. So Instagram wants you to be active, and Instagram wants you to be using all of the tools. And like I said, if you can get people engaging in your stories and in your feed, that's Instagram's sweet spot. So that's when Instagram considers you relevant, because it wants you to be actively working across both of those. It's all about the quality of the content and the effort that you're putting into it. Now, think about how it's going to be easy for you, though. You know, like, if you're like, even if posting a story a week just feels like way too much, post a story every 2 weeks. You know, the other thing is, like, don't let Instagram get you in a tizzy because there, you know, I've had times when I was in a tizzy and I was like, oh, I'm not posting the right things and what am I saying? And yeah, I did something kind of radical actually. I took 3 months off my personal Instagram just before Christmas. I just wanted some time out, and I was terrified that I was going to post when I came back. I was going to post and nobody would engage with my posts, and that's not what happened at all. I took some time out and then I came back and I said, well, I told people I was taking a break, and then I came back and I said, I'm back and this is what happened. And I got more engagement on that post than I had done in any of the posts from the previous few months. So like, if you need to take a break from Instagram for a week, or you're on a massive production deadline, like, don't be terrified of taking your pedal off the gas, because yeah, it's not going to go anywhere. But you know, that said, when you are on Instagram, you know, and when you're making it work for you, you do need to be consistently posting to get that engagement, and you do ideally need to be doing stories.
Okay, good. Yes, I'm actually delighted to hear verification. This people would like, they would like to have a session on using Instagram better and more efficiently. So that proves my notes and my planning, so I can go ahead with that. That's brilliant, because when I get reinforcement from the makers, it makes it easier that you know, we're serving the needs, and that's why we're here, is to help all of your businesses. Okay, posting to timeline is one thing. How is posting to stories different?
Very good question. Stories is, I'm finding now, is actually an easier way to get visibility. So with your timeline, people aren't generally posting lots of videos to your timeline, because if you're posting video to your timeline, you want to be posting more sort of content video that's been professionally shot and is more branded. And this is the thing where I was saying that there's more freedom in your stories. Your stories is the primary place where you're going to post your video content. And it's a real opportunity for you to start putting out video content even without like a video content production budget. You know, so say if you are a ceramicist, all you need to do is like a day in the studio, like a typical day in the studio, like start thinking about it and having fun. Typical day in the studio, so like when you're taking your clay and throwing on the wheel, and then you have a tea break, and then, oh, it's the product, and you link the product, and you know, people are getting an idea of the story behind what you're doing. So that would be the main difference, is that Instagram stories is really specifically suited to video, and your Instagram feed is more about photos. That said, I'm now using my Instagram feed for video as well, because I'm a director as well, and I just find video lots of fun. So think about what works for you and what's going to look good as well. And like, don't be afraid to experiment. Like, you can always delete something if it's an absolute mess, and you know, there's room for that. And yeah, you know, it's your playground to figure out what works for you and your brand.
Okay, we're kind of getting a bit pushed for time. I'm absolutely delighted that we'll be able to do a practical session, because I'm getting a number of requests for that. That's really super. Now, this question, if you have a small following, say over 300, what level of influencers should you be looking to approach? And then, is it rude to tag an influencer in a post?
So I wouldn't tag an influencer unless you already have a relationship with them, because that's sort of making an assumption that they're going to support your brand, and you want to give people a choice. So when you're starting out, I would try and grow it depends on the brand. Like, if it's an amazing brand and you have a really great brand offering and a really strong creative, and you're, you know, if all of that, like 360 of the brand is really solid, and you're just starting out, and you approach an influencer who has 5,000 followers and you say, you know, we're a new brand and we're reaching out to influencers who share our values and our view of the world, you know, and you just send a really nice email like that, there is a chance that they will support you. However, you need to make sure that your brand is aligned with their brand. It's with influencers, like they get contacted a lot. So you need to make sure that the offering is really, really strong that you're putting out to the influencer. But yeah, I mean, traditionally, sort of, I would advise like try and get your following up to at least 1,000, because I don't know what it is about that number, but it's just a nice round number before you start. So you're at least in the thousands, unless you're planning like a big launch and there's a brand, you know, your brand is going to sort of grow quite quickly and you want to get people in there early. It's common sense. Well, it's common, you know how, but it's also, you know, there's an etiquette and there's sort of a politeness as well. And you can never assume that somebody wants to engage in your brand.
Okay, thank you so much. I think this is definitely a clinic and webinar to be continued, and we will do so. Otherwise, I'll be shot and we'll be all running out of time. We've got loads of nice compliments, fantastic. They'd love to learn more. All great stuff. Everybody was absolutely delighted. I'd like to thank you very much, Marion. It was very, very clear. And we look forward to the next time. And thank you everyone who joined us this afternoon, and thank you Hannah and Brian for being a moral support and technical support to me. Thank you everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.